Welcome to another episode of In My Xperience on the JPEG podcast. I'm your host, Jean-PaulGedeon, and today I have a very special guest, Domenic Rinaldi from Sun Acquisitions and the M&A Unplugged podcast. Domenic, how you doing today, my friend?
Hey, Jean-Paul, thank you very much for having me. I'm doing great.
Let's jump right into this. I found you on LinkedIn. We connected somehow. I don't know, but the M&A Unplugged, I went down the rabbit hole last night listening to your content and your guests, and it is absolutely one of the best resources I've found with answers to questions that you're not just finding on Google. You bring professionals on. Sometimes you're doing your podcast solo, and that's where we get, the personality of you shining through, which is why I wanted you on the podcast as well. You're just a resource of knowledge, and I want to help get people more introduced to you and then learn from what we're going to talk about today. So
thank you for having me.
All right. I got a question to start off the day right here. I'm an EO, entrepreneurs organization. It's made up of business owners, founders of entrepreneurs in their companies. And the annual revenue is 1 million prerequisite to be considered to be a member. And then some clubs are higher. Some are 5, 10. In India, they're like 15 million. They've hit that threshold, which starts to be somewhat attractive. And, they've been through the ropes and through the ringer a little bit. To start off with this time that we're in, November 30th, 2020, I wanted to frame the conversation around opportunity. How do we prepare either to possibly acquire or exit a business? And what are some of the most common but avoidable or easily overcome obstacles? So I'll let you take from here and we'll freestyle through this. But seeing that you've got your own M&A Unplugged podcast, this is not your first rodeo. I turn over the mic to you, my friend.
All right. So we're going to freestyle. So, I'm going to say one overarching comment and then we can drill down deeper in the buyers and sellers. But the number one pitfall, and I've been doing this a long time. I've been helping people buy and sell businesses for decades. The number one pitfall is people don't properly prepare. Even when they think they prepared, they come to me and we go through their plan. And invariably, it's missing some really critical components. And it's okay if they're coming to me well in advance of wanting to buy or sell, because then we've got time. Unfortunately, the inverse is true. They come to me when they're ready, the moment they're ready to buy and sell. And there's not a lot of time to go and do all the things that they should have been doing all along. And, when I say all along, I mean all along. If you own a business, you should be running that business every day as though you might want to sell it tomorrow. And there's a couple of reasons why. One, you may be posed with an opportunity tomorrow. And if you've done all your homework, you'll be able to gauge whether that opportunity is a good one or a bad one. Because you would have done all the homework, you would know the value of your business, you would understand the intrinsic opportunities out in the marketplace, and you can respond quickly to whatever opportunity comes your way. But the other reason is a less fortunate one, which is life happens, and you may be forced to have to sell your business or exit your business. Well, if you're forced and you haven't done all the things to prepare it for maximum value and minimum risk, well, then you're leaving money on the table. And who wants to be in that situation, right? So preparation is so key, and you should be doing it from day one. And look, you might not want to sell for 20 years, and that's fine. But I promise you, if you do all the things you need to do ahead of time, you're going to run a much more successful, profitable, and gratifying business when you know these concepts than if you don't. And, the same is true when you're looking to buy. Do your homework, get prepared. There's lots of things to do beyond just picking what type of business you want to acquire. I mean, there's so many things to do. Do the preparation, put in the work so that when you see an opportunity, you can act quickly. And acting quickly when you're buying matters too, because the marketplace, believe it or not, sitting here November 2020, is incredibly frothy. The M&A market is on fire.
Wow.
There is incredible activity going on out there for reasons I can get into later. But if you're a buyer, chances are you may not be the only buyer. So if you can act quickly, you can maybe outbid or, get to the point while other people are dragging their feet and trying to fumble through how to get the transaction done.
So in real estate, there's a term or a little phrase called the 3 Ds. It's a death, divorce, and disease.
Yeah.
Some of the three main ways that you're actually going to get a deal in real estate for those reasons. Does that also play into M&As and selling or acquiring a business?
If the owner doesn't have a succession plan, doesn't have another generation to take over, that certainly plays into part of that. And if they haven't done their homework, if they have done their homework, even if one of those things happens, chances are the business will continue to operate without them. Even, if they die or if they have to take a short-term leave, they've got contingency plans built so that business will continue to operate.
So I've heard of that there's a high percentage of businesses who, like business owners and businesses, that actually don't ever sell. They just simply close the door and you're done. And I don't know what the percentage was. I don't know if it was like 80%, but it was astounding to me. I listened and I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. A lot of the times people just close the door and go home and they're done. There's never an exit strategy. Yeah. And they could be leaving so much money on the table, especially when it comes to, real local brands. They have a brand that if New Life came in and they could play off that nostalgia, there's just some good IP there. The logo, the branding, everything goes along with it can be spread into so many more markets. For instance, a small manapua, like a bakery in Hawaii, small bakery shop. It's been open for like 50 years. Yeah. And there was no second generation that wanted to take it over. So simply closed the door, and it was just a headline in the newspaper for one day. Yeah. I was looking like, that brand right there, we could put that on apparel. You could do frozen items that they could reheat at home. It could go into sauces. Like they had all these items. So do you know what the percentage is, or what can you kind of tell us about that?
I don't know what the actual percentage is, but anecdotally, I can tell you a couple of decades ago, this used to happen a lot. Like it was amazing to me how many people would decide to just close up shop and not even try to get something out of the business. But our industry has matured. Business brokers, intermediaries, M&A advisors, we've become more well-known. And so I think more and more people understand that there is somebody out there that specializes in this, because it's very different than real estate. It's very different than a lot of other things. And so I think more and more people understand that there's a resource out there that can help them. The challenge is they wait way too long to contact those resources. If they would call us ahead of time, we really could move the needle. I'm going to give you one very small and short example. We just closed a business last month. It was a banking disaster recovery business. They provided mobile disaster recovery units when a branch bank went out. They could bring a mobile unit in. That branch would be back up the next day with all of the security. I first met that owner almost 7 years ago, and we did the work, we did evaluation, and it just wasn't enough for the owner. So every year we would check in, we gave them strategies, we kind of gave them the roadmap to how to increase value and then also minimize risk. So when it came time to transfer it, fast forward 7 years later, we just sold it. We sold it for a premium, even beyond what the owner had hoped for, because he had taken the time over those 7 years with our advice to do all the things to build a really valuable business. And now, he's in transition, who will be probably for 6 months, but it's a great story. Unfortunately, there's way too few of those great stories. There should be way more because the knowledge is there. The people are there to help. But, folks just have a mental block on doing that sort of work because they always think, well, there's another day. I'll do it next year or the year after.
Right. So what do we talk about in my club in EO Hawaii? A couple of my friends, they've been approached to be acquired. Some have been acquired or merged with another company to, really leverage, whether it's construction and they bring an architecture component or whatever, something that's a complementary business into that organization. You said the M&A market is frothy right now. Is this having to do with baby boomers retiring and, there's businesses out there and they may be just ready to close the door? Are these deals that we can actually get? And how do we value something? How do we value a business that may not have done the homework? And we're going to get into the homework that they need to do, but how do we value a business that it may be just a baby boomer closing shop and that we could jump on? How do we approach them? How do we start the conversation?
So first off, the frothiness in the market is being driven by the sheer number of buyers that are in the marketplace. There are an enormous number of buyers looking for businesses to acquire, and they come in a couple of different forms. One is private equity groups. These are very sophisticated groups that raise money with the design to go out and acquire businesses. And many of those private equity groups like to help their companies that they've acquired go out and do additional acquisitions as a way to grow. And so you see a lot of that activity. And private equity pre-COVID had raised $1.5 billion to go out and invest. So there's an enormous amount of money sitting out there to be invested. Then the next group of buyers are strategics, companies who are having a hard time growing organically. And one of the easiest ways to grow is actually go and acquire another business, whether it's a competitor or diversify. Go out and buy something that diversifies your product line or your service offering. And so we're seeing an incredible number of those buyers. And then the third tier of buyers that we're seeing is wannabe entrepreneurs or small investor groups. And you're seeing a lot of that now because a lot of people have been laid off, furloughed, they've had their salaries cut, they've taken on more responsibility with no additional compensation. And so you're seeing all of these wannabe entrepreneurs entering the marketplace and wanting to own a business. And so you have an enormous number of buyers chasing not enough really good deals. And this is all being fueled by low interest rates and the fact that the capital markets are wide open. So banks are absolutely lending. They're putting a lot more scrutiny on deals because they need to understand what's going on with COVID in an individual business, but they're out there lending. Interest rates are very low, and that's just fueling, adding fuel to the already very hot fire with all those buyer groups.
Wow. So does a lot of it have to do with consolidations as well? I've been seeing a lot of consolidation going on, particularly in one of the businesses that we're in is out-of-home advertising. So that's billboards, that's place-based advertising in supermarkets, gas stations, traditional roadside billboards. There's a lot of consolidation going on with there's like a big three companies, three that kind of own it: Outfront, Clear Channel, and Lamar. These big companies. Have you been seeing that? Is consolidation? Is it that cycle again where a lot of businesses are getting scooped up and put into one group where they got a holding company?
Yeah, look, I've never seen that slow down. That's sort of been a constant throughout my career. You might have industries that come in and out of favor for consolidation. At one point in time, I can remember independent pharmacies were all the rage. There was tremendous consolidation, and all of the big players, CVS and Walgreens and all the big, were buying up as many independent pharmacies as they possibly could. Well,
Right.
now you get to this point where there's really not a lot of independent pharmacies. They're still out there, but they're few and far between. So, it now, moves over to healthcare. And so consolidation has just been a constant theme. Just depends on what's the industry at the moment that really seems to be, the right target for consolidation. But yeah, and that's a great way to grow. And by the way, the bigger you get as an organization and the easier it is for you to integrate additional businesses into your core operation, the more valuable your business can become. Not only because you have higher revenues and higher EBITDA, but now your multiples get higher. So just because you're bigger, you now can demand a higher multiple for that, same product.
So I have a little experience with the valuation of companies
Yeah.
and how you can extract more value out of the deal by hiring an M&A consultant and not just trying to do it alone.
Yeah.
I've seen this in my family for frozen food distribution in Hawaii. My family, my wife's parents, they grew quite a large business. And I was talking with my father-in-law about when he sold it. I said, why did you hire a company? Couldn't you have just, did the deal yourself? He mentioned some of the things you mentioned on your other episodes of your podcast, M&A Unplugged, which got to plug that again.
Thank you.
But he mentioned some things that he was able to get a higher multiple because he brought someone in and they brought multiple buyers to the table. Not just you got one buyer and you're talking to them, bring other parties to the table. And it created, I'm not saying a bidding war, but it definitely created more interest and move the needle to a higher valuation that he said. Alone, there's no way he would have even got to that point.
Yeah.
So how, I know you're in the business and you sell it, you want to get some, but you've also given some real ways that people don't need to use you. And I think that's the most valuable, where you can tell the sort of things that if someone hired you, they would. So what's the importance of, hiring an M&A consultant? How much more do you think you can get for your business? Because there are businesses that I know looking to sell and they'll be watching this as well.
Yeah. Over the years, I have any number of opportunities that I could point to, past clients, where we were able to really create an incredible market for them. And offers leverage really matters. The more offers you can bring, then we can go to work and we can really figure out what kind of horse race this is and where's the maximum value for our client. But I would caution that it's not just about price. It's also about the terms and how much of the purchase price you get to keep in your pocket. And so while I think we do a great job at bringing our clients leverage and getting the maximum prices, we also are experts at understanding all of the finer things that go into a deal, like what's the deal structure and what's the best deal structure so that they're going to have the lowest tax bill when they walk away. What are some of the survival clauses that you need to be careful of so that there can't be clawbacks, or if there are clawbacks, they minimize, the impact to the net proceeds of the client. And so, and there's so many pitfalls along the way. If you haven't done this before, it's so hard to understand and anticipate what all of those are. My team is approaching our 400th transaction. So you can imagine, having done 400 deals over the course of, 2 decades, we've seen and done it all. So there's no scenario that's going to come up where we're not going to understand what the best outcome is for our client and how to help manage the deal for the best outcome. You could be talking about a dozen, 2 dozen individual things along the way that can make all the difference for somebody. And so that's the value of having, an intermediary that's got a lot of experiences. They're going to protect your asset. And it's not just about purchase price. It's about so much more.
Excellent. Now, how does an M&A consultant get paid? Is it a commission of the total price? Is it a flat rate? Do you just build that in to what you're negotiating? How do you guys get paid so we can kind of, dispel some myths, or, people don't know about how this actually works?
Yeah, look, so there's lots of different models out there, right? And it also depends on the size of your business, right? Smaller businesses are going to have a different model for the most part than larger businesses. But generally speaking, the models typically look like some advance fee, nominal. Some companies don't even charge an advance fee, but most reputable ones do charge some advance fee up front. And then the lion's share of their compensation comes at the closing table, if and when there's a deal that's closed. And the commissions are all over the map. It could be as high as 10 or 12% and work its way down to single digits. And again, it depends on how large is the deal, what was the upfront payment. There's lots of things that go into that. What I would say to your audience is, when you're picking or choosing an M&A advisor, you want to really understand their experience. You want to go with somebody who's really done a lot of deals. You look for teams, so companies that have resources. Because if you're, working with just someone who's a solo practitioner, the problem is what happens if something happens to that person? Or, if it's a one or two man firm, right? If something happens, your deal is then stuck, right? So it's better to do something with firms that have tremendous experience and a lot of it, and have a lot of deals under their belt. That you really want to be looking for that.
So you have a tool on your website that I was listening to one of your podcast episodes, and you were talking about, I guess there were 4 different resources that we could go to. It was on K2 Advisor. That's ADVISER, singular.com. I went there and I just took a test drive. I wanted to see, okay, what is this about? And it was about a 5-minute questionnaire. And that shed a lot of light even on my business. And I was answering these questions on, I think it was the buy side. So why did you put that together? How long did it take you? And is that really like the roadmap, the prep tools, that, companies need? Yeah.
So K2 Advisor is a separate company. So my primary company is Sun Acquisitions, where we help people with their transaction. But as I started the podcast with, the number one pitfall I see is people just don't properly prepare. And so I've been wanting to, for many years, build something where I can help people be better prepared so they maximize value and minimize risks. And so we did that. We built this company. We launched it earlier this year. As you pointed out, there's some free resources. And that company is all about helping people get ready for whatever they're trying to do, buy or sell, or scale, even if they want to scale. And so we think we put together some nice free resources. If nothing else, it's a litmus test for people to understand how ready they really are. And then we can hop on a call and go from there and do some consulting and some advice, to point out where the gaps are. Because if you can close those gaps, you're going to have a much more profitable transaction.
I see there's a lot of, social media has just put the word out there that, be your own boss, be happy, happiness is success. And, a lot of people want to be entrepreneurs now. And there's going to be, there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who, would be better in a company working for someone else and be just awesome in that role. But, people want to take the leap. So I've been seeing a lot of different types of businesses out there, whether it's, low barrier to entry type businesses, Amazon drop shipping, buy it from Alibaba or AliExpress, sell it on Amazon, or you buy it on Etsy or eBay and sell it on Facebook Marketplace. When you have these sort of companies, these e-commerce websites where they're buying from a supplier and they're just brokering the deals, have you sold many of these type of companies? Are they, because the barrier to entry is so low and generally they're kind of niche products where they have like one product websites, how do you value these, and are they attractive for people to buy, or is it just way too easy to get in the business?
Yeah, so I'll say that's not our market.
Mm-hmm.
I consider those to be side hustles
Mm,
or, solopreneur kind of endeavors. Now, and that's not to say that
right.
you can't take something like that and blow it up, because certainly there are people out there that are doing some of those businesses in a big way, right? But
Yeah.
by and large, those are solopreneurs or side hustles, and that's not really our business. We're dealing mostly with ongoing concerns that have generally a floor of about 2 million in annual revenues up to about 50 million.
Mm-hmm.
And your question about valuing those businesses, it's
Yeah.
really hard, because I've seen firsthand some of those businesses completely go away almost overnight. Almost
Yes.
overnight. And I have an example I'll point to you. We had a couple of guys that had approached us a number of years ago. They designed this product. They maybe, hindsight, they probably shouldn't have done this, but it would have gotten knocked off eventually. But they had it manufactured in China. They
Mm-hmm.
put it up on Amazon, and the first year was unbelievable. But in going into the second year, it was already obvious that they had been knocked off, and their price point was cut by more than half. A year later, they were a shell of what they were when they came out. And so these businesses pop up and then they go away because they're so easy to knock you off, and or have another competitor come in, and it's a race to the bottom. How cheap can I price the product just to get market share? And
Mm-hmm.
so those businesses are hard to value because what's the staying power? And if when there are low barriers to entry, it's very, very hard to value those businesses.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. A lot of them are just driving revenue through Facebook ads, Google ads, Instagram ads. And once they turn those ads off,
Yeah,
it's not working the same.
right,
And you can't just have the same ad. You need to evolve it. You need to keep
right.
moving. So
Yeah,
some people are really good at that and driving revenue.
yep,
And then they'll flip the businesses, like you said, to side hustles. And this is the most of the ads and stuff I keep seeing. I guess they
yeah,
targeted me, right?
yeah,
Start your side hustle. I'm like, I'm not interested in that. Like, I got a real business. I got a couple real businesses, and they're just. I wanted
yeah.
to ask you that because a lot of the younger guys who are seeing that, and they talk to me too about, oh, should I do this? I'm like, I don't think you should do that. Like, why would you buy that when you could do the same thing yourself?
Yeah. Well, but I also think you hit on a key point there. I think those businesses are really built for people who understand social media and advertising, Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, wherever it is, right? If you understand how to advertise there and what it's going to, cost per acquisition, and you've got that down, those are great businesses for you to run.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't understand that world, I think you need to be really careful. There's a lot of smart
Yeah.
people out there that spend all of their time figuring that out, and you have to compete against them.
So I got a question about intellectual property,
Mm.
licensing intellectual property, and valuing those agreements. And I think there was a very very Mercedes Benz. Are
Mm.
you familiar with the Mercedes Benz when I guess they sold the brand but didn't sell the logo, was not included in that deal? Are you familiar with that?
I read it. I didn't, but I'm not familiar with the details, though. Yes.
So when selling a company, how important and how do you value the brand value or the IP that is included? Say, for instance, I have an advertising business, right? And we developed a grocery divider. It's a separator that you can put ads on. I'll show you right
Yeah.
here. Right here.
Huh.
Easy piece of plastic,
Yeah.
and you can easily slide in
Yeah.
your ad and pull it out just through here. It just slides in and out. It's really
Yeah.
tight on this one.
Yeah.
But these ones produce thousands of dollars a month for us in ads in the
Yes.
grocery stores. We put them out and the stores use them. And then we have a patent on this, not only in the US, but in Australia, Japan, Canada, the UK, and the European Union.
Yeah.
So overall, to patent that piece of plastic in those countries was about $25,000.
Okay.
Because we used an attorney to do that. And it's already paid itself back, and it produces positive cash flow every month. So when you have something that produces revenue, and this is not necessarily like a brand or a trademark, it's a patent that produces revenue. Have you been in deals where you had IP that was producing revenue, whether it's technology or a physical product? And how do you value that? How do you put a value on that? And do you bundle it with your company? Do you sell it separately? Do you sell the company, and do you license this technology? What do you see? And it's kind of a loaded question, but
look,
what's your take?
This question has many layers to it, and it's a very, very complex question to answer. And there's no way we could cover it all, and we probably need to pull an intellectual property and patent attorney and valuator in here to have this discussion, because it gets that complicated. So I'm going to bring it down a couple of notches, and here's my high level on this. To the extent that you have patents or intellectual property or trademarks or whatever, and they've been deployed in the business, so they are in application in your business, the theory, very simple theory, is that they are generating revenues and cash flows for you if they're in application, right? I mean, otherwise they're useless, right? If they're not generating anything, then really whatever it is, the patent or the trademark, is not really having an intended effect on the business. But if it's in application and it's moving the needle, it should be considered in the multiple that you ascribe to that business. And so what do I mean by that? So very simply, one of the easy ways to value a business, and one of the most common ways, especially for small businesses, is you take a look at what the adjusted EBITDA of the business is, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. You look at that and you adjust it for one-time expenses or owner expenses that are in the business. So that's your adjusted EBITDA. And then you apply a multiple to that. 1, 2, 3, 5, whatever it is. And the multiple should take into account what's in the business, patents, trademarks, IP, how is the business run? Are there recurring revenues? Are there any client concentrations? There's a whole bunch of value, what I call value drivers, that you should be evaluating whenever you're looking at a business, that will ultimately help you determine what is the right multiple. And you need to look at all of those value drivers, and intellectual property being one of those. And so it is more complicated. It can be much more complicated than that, but to give your audience some practical advice, that's how I would approach an acquisition or a sale when I think about intellectual property. Now, it gets more complicated when you have something, a patent or whatever, and you haven't put it into application and it's sitting to the side. Then the question becomes, do you carve that out? Can you carve it out and not breach a non-compete if you have to sign a non-compete after you sell the business? Right. So this gets a little more complicated for sure, but if you have things that are not in application, you might be able to separate those from the deal and only include the things that are in application. But getting a good attorney here really matters.
I'm so glad you said that. That shows your integrity and that you're not just trying to make things up on the seat of your pants for a show. That's excellent advice. And when you talked about value drivers, I wanted to touch on something that is, the phenomena in the world and in the US, especially with Shark Tank. So you can see a lot of deals, a lot of companies who go on Shark Tank and they're looking for investment. But sometimes they're just saying, I can't invest in your business. It's just not investable. So out of the many businesses you've been involved in and you've seen the landscape and you stay up to date with, the industry, what businesses are less attractive to get into? And more importantly, what are the businesses that are worth money that you could build and sell? Like, what if someone's going to start a business or they can pivot into one, because there's a lot of pivoting going on? What are the businesses that can get the most value when it comes time to sell?
I love this. I love this question. You're probably not going to get the answer that maybe you thought you were going to get here. We'll see.
Is it going to be on your show? Are you saving this? Is this a teaser episode?
No, not at all. I'm going to answer right here, right now. I believe that there are people for every type of business. It just depends on your background, your skill set, your passion. Right now, you got to be a little crazy to get into the restaurant business, right? You got to be thinking, what is going on in the restaurant business? But I guarantee you, when all of this settles out, the restaurant industry is going to be there in some, form or fashion. And there might be somebody out there that just has an incredible skill set for the restaurant industry. I would hate to see them go into IT, because if I told you IT was hot, and it is, that they go into IT, but they have absolutely no passion, no skill set for it. So you really have to take an inventory of yourself, what you want, what floats your boat, where you want to be 10, 20 years from now, what you want your legacy to be, what gets you up in the morning and gets you excited. You need to think about those things. And yes, you have to think about what's going to make money, right? So that all has to come into account. You don't want to go into a business just because you have a passion about it, but there's no future in it. But I believe that people have general skill sets and they have specific skill sets, and you can apply those to any number of things. But going through that discovery really matters. That said, coming back to your question, there obviously are some really hot markets right now. IT being one, healthcare being another. Healthcare is smoking hot, depending on where you're at, skilled and unskilled help, nursing, product development, you name it. I mean, those sectors are really incredibly hot. I think we're going to see manufacturing start to come back to the United States. With what happened during COVID and the supply chains breaking down, U.S. companies are going to demand some level of manufacturing here so that they're never in a shortage again, like the one they had before. And so I think we're going to see a little bit of resurgence in manufacturing, not across all sectors, but I think we're going to experience that. So, I think to put a bow on this, I think you really have to take inventory of yourself and figure out what you really want. And then does that make sense from a business ownership perspective?
Are you familiar with EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System?
I am.
Now, and so Traction.
Yep.
It was said in that, because we run that in our own company, and it's helped tremendously. And Gino Wickman, the author, he said that he's seen, companies that are sold that are, EOS, or companies that run Traction, actually get a higher multiple because they have processes in place. They have documented processes. They have an accountability chart, which is, traditionally known as the organizational chart. Roles and responsibility, who does what, how to do that job, and the core values of a company, the culture that was created, the 10, 5, 3, 1 year goals and outlooks. Is that something you recommend that kind of touches on the checklist that you have on your website, but only a small component? So for companies that do run Traction or have documented processes and training and employee manuals, are they, it's kind of a no-brainer. Are they more attractive? And how would you say someone should start if they haven't done this? They run the checklist on your website on k2advisor.com, and they're like, oh my goodness, I am not ready to sell.
Yeah.
Where do they start to get ready to sell?
Yeah.
Where do they start?
Yeah. So there's a lot of questions there. And I'll start with, like you said, it's a no-brainer. If you have those systems and those processes in place, your business is more valuable. Why is it more valuable? Well, it's more valuable because you have de-risked the business for a new owner. So somebody coming in doesn't have to go find, and recreate the wheel as they take over the business. It's all laid out for them. And it should lead to one other big thing. And whether it's EOS or eMyth or, there's any number of organizations out there that do the same thing, right? And I'm not here to promote one over the other. They're all, they all have their strengths and their weaknesses. But what they all do is help you as an owner understand how to run really sort of a self-managing business. And if you can get your business to be self-managing, you've reached the pinnacle of probably value and also satisfaction. Because when the business is not reliant on you as the owner, somebody coming in to maybe acquire that business, when they see that, that's going to give them tremendous comfort. That means the owner can exit stage left and there's going to be no disruption in the business. And me as a buyer, I'm going to take tremendous comfort in knowing that. Because now it doesn't matter if that owner's here or not. You're going to get more value for the business. And so where do you start? Start with people that you trust, know, and like. We've built our business, the K2 around that. We start with the assessment, we understand the gaps, and then we offer coaching for people to close those gaps, understand what they are, why they exist. And I really do believe in the 80-20 rule. You could do everything, but you don't need to do everything. Where are you going to get the biggest bang for your buck? And usually it's the 80-20 rule. So we try to hone in on where are the areas where you can, immediately move the needle and get the biggest impact on value. And then you can slowly go work on the other things. Because it's easy to get lost in a lot of those programs and try to do everything. When reality is, there are a few things you could do that really would improve value dramatically. And then you could go do all the other stuff.
Can you touch on those main value drivers? I know we have that on you have that on your other episodes, but can we give just a high level of where those are?
Yeah. So look, I'll highlight a couple of the key ones, and we've already talked about one of them, which is the owner of the business. Are you in various aspects of the business? The decisions have to be run through you. Are you the salesperson, or do you do the major sales, or do the clients know you? Like, if you're in the business in that way, you should be working to get yourself out of those aspects. The less you are involved in those aspects and the more strategic you are, the higher the value. The next one is recurring revenue. To the extent that you can build recurring revenue into your business, I promise you, you're going to get one, maybe two multiples more than you would have gotten before. And I don't mean repeat business. There's a big difference.
Thank you.
The difference between, clients that you know are going to come back and purchase from you every year versus the client that is on a subscription with you and you get money from them every single month. That is recurring revenue. If you can build your business that way, big kudos to you. Client concentrations. This sort of goes hand in hand with recurring revenue, but to the extent that any one client is more than 10% of your gross revenues, chances are your value is going down. So you want to work hard to minimize any one client. Because think about it, if you have one client that's 10% or more of your business and they go away, you could have a substantial amount of your profit go away. And so you want to minimize any one client. How much cash does the business need to operate? Does it self-fund itself, or do you constantly have to have a line of credit? Are you constantly tapping into it and drawing it down and struggling to go collect money to then buy down your line of credit? I mean, that's a business when it needs those sorts of resources. new owner is going to look at that and, wonder if that's the best use of their capital. I talked to a client the other day. They have a $7.5 million line of credit that is almost completely drawn down.
Wow.
It's not that big of a business. For them to have
Sounds
a
like construction
$7.5 million line means that, yes, they are. But for a $7.5 million, it's going to be hard to put your head on your pillow at night. I mean, 2 or 3 things go wrong, and you've got a line of credit out there that you can't service. And so, now look, lots of businesses out there, risk reward sometimes, but the less reliant you are on those sorts of facilities, the more valuable your business is going to be. Barriers to entry, we talked about it. Yes. Are the barriers to entry high or low? To the extent that you've built a niche and it's hard for people to get into your niche and replace you or displace you, more valuable your business is going to be. The easier it is to get into your business and pop up and compete, the less valuable. And so, as you can see, these are all scales, right? You have to take each value driver and it goes up or it goes down. And then you have to put them all together at the end of the day. And that's how you ultimately formulate what's the amount of risk in this business, how easy it is it going to be for you to go into the business and then to grow the business. And so I just hit on 5 or 6 there. There's about a dozen or more, depending on the type of business. And we put people through that analysis and evaluate their businesses on all those drivers because it's critical that they understand it.
That is absolutely key. I'm so glad you mentioned each one of those. Those are definitely getting a lot of people right now listening, questioning their own businesses, and going to take some action for sure. Even myself listening to that, it makes me, very happy to know with our advertising business that we do have the repeat business or the recurring revenue, the cash flow. So we got the cash flow. It's not a heavy cash or it doesn't have a lot of expenses that you have to recur to operate the business, particularly because we have it as a branch of our printing and design part of our company. But you really hit on the key points of people working in the business and the importance of people working on their business and the business not relying upon them. Yeah. My business is not Jean-PaulGedeon, the business. And I see a lot of businesses like that, dynamic, killer salespeople, operational, but they can't go on a vacation for more than 2 weeks.
Right.
A test could be, can you go on a vacation and be unplugged from your company for 1 month? That's a very, very good determination if you have a business which you can exit or to hit one of those value drivers that you mentioned.
Yep, exactly. You hit the nail on the head there.
So now we kind of transition to talk about the, professional services, physicians, dentists, doctors, lawyers, a lot of these high income earners, but if they're not there, they're not there.
Yep.
That's a tough one.
Very hard to sell those. If you built a real practice, easier to sell. Multiple physicians, professionally PAs, nurse practitioners. If you've got a larger business, easier to sell something like that. If you're a solo practitioner, much harder. And whether you're an accountant, an attorney, professional, it doesn't matter, right? Those are much harder to sell. You typically have to stick around for a good period of time to transition. You earn out of those. You slowly turn over your clients or your patients or whatever to somebody else in the office, and you earn out of whatever your revenue and profit stream was. And that earn out could take 3, 4, 5 years. It just depends. So those are much longer transitions out for sure.
Domenic, it's almost like we're scripting this, the way that you've transitioned to the earnout. This is a really good one I wanted to talk about. I have personal friends who have done earnouts, and some of them wish, they would have just paid out earlier, instead of having to drag it on and have that earnout, someone acquiring the business. They would have just I would have loved if I could get out 3 years earlier and just paid them their X amount of dollars. I didn't want them hanging around. But in an earnout, and this is very important for, I'd say, some of the younger guys who watch my show, looking to grow their business, and they may not have all the capital to throw into a new business and, a couple $1 million and buy it, but they feel they'll bring substantial value to the business, whether it's sales, so the previous owner can get out at a higher valuation. How do we go about valuing a company? How does an earnout structure work? And I know there's multiple, but can you give a little insight around the earnout, which seems to be very attractive for more and more deals that are, not the big enterprises?
So earnouts are fraught with difficulties and potential ways for folks to fight after the fact, whether it be in a lawsuit. You're opening up something that, wherever you have to determine at a future date whether or not a payment was earned, unless you're crystal clear, you could really wind up with a lot of heartache. I will say, though, that said, in this COVID pandemic time, earnouts are probably going to become pretty prevalent, because you've either had companies who have decreased in value because they've had a real hit to their revenues and their profit streams,
right?
Or conversely, they have been one of the lucky few that have had their businesses actually increase in value. And now it's almost an embarrassment of riches, and they want to get paid for this new watermark, but who knows if it's sustainable. They might be experiencing that increase just because of COVID. And when things settle back down, so will the revenues and the cash flows. So I think we're entering an environment right now where we're going to see more of this. When it comes to earnouts, my advice to both parties is you really need good legal representation. And what I mean by good legal representation is people who do a lot of M&A deals and are very, very familiar with drafting earnouts. So when you interview an M&A attorney, make sure that they've drafted a ton of earnouts and understand what sort of litigation their previous clients might have gotten into as a result of those, because it really is fraught with potential for lawsuits. If I'm a buyer, I want the earnout to be at the most granular level, meaning I want it probably on profit or gross margin. If you're looking at a revenue earnout, if I'm a seller, I want it at the highest level, which is revenues, because those other things can be manipulated. Gross margins can be manipulated and profits can be manipulated, right? And so, and this is where it gets really muddy, because you need to make sure that the definitions, everybody agrees to them, they understand what they are, and that you can easily discern, whatever the time frame is, what those future payments are. And are you going to be able to earn more? Are there going to be targets so you can earn more, or can you earn less over what period of time? And that's just one example of an earnout. There could be other types of earnouts. You could have earnouts tied to client retention. You could have earnouts tied to employee retention, product development. All sorts of things. You could have earnouts tied to all sorts of things. Get good representation, and you'll have and you'll be well taken care of. Yeah.
So I asked this question to. There's two questions. I'll start with one. I asked this to many real estate agents who are, whether they're in commercial or residential real estate, and they're sellers or agents representing. I say, do you invest in your own properties as well? Some of them do. Some of them have their own properties. And someone specializing in M&A, such as yourself and your team, does your team, are you guys part of a private equity firm, or do you guys have your own, do you guys purchase your own businesses, or are you strictly going in there, eating what you kill, and brokers, M&A consultants working it that way?
Yeah. We have never taken an interest in a deal, whether it be on the buy side or the sell side. And we represent both buyers and sellers, never in the same deal, but we do buy side representation or sell side. We've never taken an interest in a deal. We've been offered that opportunity many times in lieu of our commission or for part of our commission or lots of things. That's just not our model. I know there are some people out there that do that, but that's just not our model and the way we approach it. We're very good at the transaction and getting, either the buyer the best deal or the seller the best deal, depending on who we represent. And we've never taken a position, and I don't know that we ever will.
Good. So let's say someone acquired a business. Let's say my company, JPEG, has acquired a business. Now, what do we do in the first month that we acquired a new business? What do we do when we got it? We made the announcements. We did the press release. Hey, we merged with so-and-so, or we acquired so-and-so company.
Yeah.
What now?
Yeah. People and communication are my two big things. On both sides. The people in your existing company and the people in the target company. My contention is that the people are your most valuable asset. You may have a great product, you may have a great service, you may have a great patent, whatever, but it's the people that make the business run day in and day out. Get your arms around those people and stay close to them and listen to them and get to know them and communicate frequently. What are your intentions? What do you see? Solicit their feedback. Making sure lines of communication are open and clear, and so that there's nothing lost in the translation. And that goes for like I said, your existing clients in your company as well as the ones that you're taking over in the target company, because there'll be lots of confusion potentially. And as leaders, I think our job is to make sure that all of that confusion and all of that noise goes away. People know they have jobs. If their salaries have not changed, if their jobs, let them know all of this. Let them know what the future holds. Stay in touch. And then once you get the people and the communication right, then you can start to do all the other things, right? You get to the clients, you get to the merging the systems and the whatever it is. But you're not going to get all of those other things done unless you've won the hearts and the minds of the people and you've communicated in a proper way. So my advice is do those things. And I'd go light on making major changes immediately unless the business is in jeopardy or it's a sinking ship and you have to make changes to right the ship. But if you've acquired a healthy business, I'd go very slow on making any major changes until you win the hearts and the minds, and then the changes are going to be much easier for people to take once you have their backing.
You hit that's a very good point about the people. I mean, that's one of the reasons Amazon bought Zappos for their culture, because it's not something you can just buy. I mean, or create yourself in a short amount of time. Zappos created that, cultivated that, so attractive.
Yes.
Extremely customer centric, and then
sad news on the Zappos founder.
Yeah. That's this reason was on my mind, and you hit the nail on the head. It was really very fresh. You kind of been famous for saying that there's no perfect business out there, and you kind of want a business with warts, as you said. What are some of the warts as opportunity that we could see that? I mean, we could run someone through that checklist on your website. Yeah. But what are some of the warts we should watch out for, which actually pose as a opportunity for when you're looking to acquire a company?
Yeah.
And say you already have an existing business and you want to, acquire an additional company that works together.
So it's a hard question to answer, Jean-Paul, because it just depends on the type of business that you're acquiring, right? You might be acquiring a manufacturing business that, with some upgrades to the production line, it could be 20, 30, 40% more efficient. You could be acquiring a business that has a really lousy website, and
Yeah.
with a little bit more SEO, you really can, turn the ship around. Or maybe you add shopping cart technology to it where it wasn't there before. Like social media, I think, is a big one. Lots of people, especially, the baby boomers, haven't been so quick to adapt to all of the social media. And I don't mean that as a blanket statement, because there's plenty of very savvy baby boomers about social media.
Disclaimer.
But by and large, yeah, I don't want to be labeled that by the way, I happen to be a baby boomer, so but
so you can say it.
Social media is clearly one where they have done very little, and you could brush up their Facebook page, LinkedIn, be running ads, and you could take the business to the next level.
Yes.
So there are so many things that you could potentially do. I think you just need to look at the business, but you want to identify those things, right? Because when you identify all the warts and the opportunities, as long as they're not material, as long as it's something that couldn't crush the business, then those are your opportunities for growth. That's where you could take the business. And I've never met a buyer that wants to buy a business and keep it status quo. Everybody wants to take the business to the next level. And those warts are really your opportunity to take it to the next level.
Truer words have never been spoken. Oh my goodness. All right, Domenic, with respect to your time, we're running here about an hour. I want to ask you a couple hot takes, and you can just answer them how you want, and then leave us with whatever you want to share with everyone. Social media influencers. I see a lot of them creating their own product lines. Is this something that you see becoming more prevalent, where people who have an audience start to build companies around their attention? And is this an opportunity to potentially partner with these type of influencers, or are you familiar or not with this?
Yeah, I am a little bit familiar with this. I'm a little off topic here as far as M&A goes, but my opinion on it is I see lots of influencers out there building products and doing a great job at it. And if you have a great idea, and if you can get the time of some of these influencers and build an affiliate network with some of them as a way to grow your business, kudos to you. Everybody wins. That influencer will make money because they're sending their audience to you, and you'll get to ramp quickly because you're doing it without having to build your own lists and your own following. You can build it on the success of influencers. And, with Zoom and with YouTube, I see lots of people trying to become influencers.
All right, next one is direct-to-consumer brands, circumventing traditional retail channels. Are these something that you're kind of watching as, valuations are building of all these direct-to-consumer health brands, healthcare or Dollar Shave Club? I like to mention them. Yeah. Are you familiar with these deals? And is this a trend where people need to think of a direct-to-consumer strategy depending on their business? Do you see the value there?
It comes down to the cost of acquisition, right? I mean, how much does it cost to acquire that client as a direct strategy versus going through distribution channels, right? And you have to, that's just a financial modeling question, right? But if you can get your cost of acquisition down to acceptable level and go direct, you'd always want to go to direct, right? Build your brand, build your audience, build your community. You're going to have a much more valuable asset.
I think you just said that the cost of acquisition, that was so key, because some of these D2C companies don't actually make money.
Yeah.
But they're building their user base or their client base, and then they sell that.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, by the way, can still be very valuable to somebody, but it'd be way more valuable if you were profitable and you can get your cost of acquisition down, right?
Excellent. All right. Well, those are a couple hot takes. Domenic, do you have anything else you want to share? Something that you want to let everybody know? And of course, we're going to, link to your podcast as well and your website to go and do the assessment. Anything you want to say to anyone here, or something that's timely that you want to share?
No, nothing that's timely, but I just say what I said at the beginning. If you're thinking about acquiring or maybe selling your business at some point in time, prepare and really understand what preparation means. We talked about the free resources on our website. Please go take advantage of these free resources. I even offer consults, free consults. People want it. I think that this is a tremendous time. In spite of COVID, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities. I already see it. And so if you're keeping your eyes open and you're working hard and looking for them, they're going to be out there. And I think it's a great time to buy or sell a business.
Domenic, how does everyone get a hold of you?
Best way is email. It's Domenic, Domenic at K2 Advisor, K the number 2 ADVISER.com.
Amazing, my friend. I'm so glad you took the time out to speak with us today. I'm going to go back and listen to the rest of your episodes. I just think there's so much value there. It ties into a book that I'm listening to called The Millionaire Next Door. One of my other guests recommended to listen to that.
Oh, yeah.
He built a chain of surf shops. By the time he was 40 years old, sold that for $10 million.
Wow.
First book he ever read was after he sold it. It was The Millionaire Next Door. I'm listening to it. That's totally him. You would not even know.
Yeah, that's
He's just
great.
wearing T-shirts and shirts and living the dream in Hawaii. You never know.
Good for him. That's awesome. Hey, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Domenic, we'll be in touch. This is not the last time we talk. I'm going to keep following you as well. Have a great one, my friend.
Take care.